don't really know. That's where Diaz really has, I think, a punter's chance of winning this fight. Having said that, in my humble opinion, well, I'll say my official predictions for a week or two from now when we do the show before that. But as of right now, I very much think that McGregor will win this fight. But like I said, I am very curious to see what he looks like fighting 25 pounds heavier than what he's normally fighting at, or what he's used to fight at, what we're used to seeing him fight at. So that's to me that is an extra intriguing element to this matchup, alongside the personalities, the very polarizing, love 'em or hate 'em personalities that both guys have. So, but it should sell tickets. I mean, that's the best. Like I said, it's great for the UFC because this has a high level of interest, especially inside the sport, but even outside the sport, they're a little more household names than some of what we've been getting lately at UFC pay-per-view events, and it should draw extremely well. So, like I said, kudos to the UFC and Dana White for, taking what could have been a disaster, another disaster, in a current trend of disasters, and making a positive out of it. But the one last thing I want to say on this specific UFC 196 and the main event changing is that I really hope that this doesn't become a trend, a regular thing, where main events are being changed, a couple days, a week, 2 weeks, a month before we get to the fight, because it's really, really bad for business. Really bad for business. So let's hope it's a fluke that's happened a couple times here in recent memory. And in one final bit of UFC news before we move on to some other sports, we've got a big fight, as I mentioned, coming up this Saturday on UFC Fight Night 84, and it is taking place over in London, England, and it will feature the hometown boy Michael Bisping taking on the returning Anderson the Spider Silva. Now, I think Bisping will get a little bit of a push, and a little bit of an edge in this match from it taking place in London, but I do not think that it's going to take Silva more than 2 rounds to beat Bisping. So, I mean, there's your prediction straight out. Spider in 2 rounds or less via, knockout, submission, whatever. Doesn't matter. He's going to win in 2 rounds or less. That's my prediction. But Spider is one of the greatest fighters in his weight class or in any weight class of all time. I think you'd be crazy to argue that. You can if you want, but I think you'd be crazy. Bisping is just not on Spider's level, in my opinion. And so long as Silva isn't rusty, out of shape, slow, because he's been away, he hasn't fought for a while. So, assuming that, he's in fighting shape, that he is fight ready, as we know him to be able to be, then there's no reason to think that Bisping stands a chance. The only way Bisping stands a chance is if Silva is not, in fact, fight ready yet. And even then, Silva could win via decision. But it should be it'll be entertaining regardless of how it goes. But this is one you gotta check out. It's free, for crying out loud, and these are huge pay-per-view level names. So check out Fox Sports 1 this Saturday. Fight action starts around 7 o'clock with the main event scheduled to start around or after 9 o'clock. Alright, well, I think personally that it's time for a little balls on ice. That's right, it's time we do some hockey talk here on the show. After all, I live in the state of hockey, home of the Minnesota Wild. And the Wild are, at nothing, if nothing else, at the moment, a very intriguing team once again, as just 5 games ago they fired former head coach Mike Yeo, who had been the coach of the team for 5 years now, was one, I want to say, was like the 5th longest tenured coach in the league too, something like that. But they finally decided to stop with the insanity and quit expecting a different result from the same events. And Yo got canned, and his replacement was John Torchetti, who has a couple interim head coaching takeovers in his past, but never been able to latch on really to the full-time head coaching gig. He came in, and we won our first 4 games under him, 3 on the road against bad Canada teams, and then we came back to Minnesota this past Sunday to play in the 2016 NHL Coors Light Stadium Series, where there are 2 games this season that are held outdoors in the National League, in the National Hockey League. And the Wild were one of the 4 teams with the honor and opportunity to play in one of those 2 games this year. And it took place this past Sunday at TCF Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the Gophers play their football games, where the Vikings played their football games for the past 2 years, and where the Wild destroyed our daddy, the Chicago Blackhawks, by a score of 6-1 on Sunday. It was absolutely incredible. I watched the whole thing on TV. There was over 50,000 people in attendance. The game was opened by Soul Asylum. After the first period, Cheap Trick played, so you had 2 huge rock bands playing live here. In the first period, it started snowing very lightly and gently, but they were these huge, beautiful white flakes. It was almost surreal. I heard a lot of hockey insiders say that this is what hockey players feel that heaven is like. That you're, playing in front of 50,000 people outside on the rink. It's a light snow, and it's just, it's magic. And it really was. The vibe was insane. It was a whole weekend's worth of events. On Saturday, there was a whole bunch of meet and greet with that was highlighted, by a alumni game. And I know a few people who attended that, and I know other people who watched it as well, and just thought that it was great. Like, this concept in any other sport or league is a joke and viewership's down, but it was actually pretty great and well received, as well as high quality. So just overall, the whole weekend went phenomenal for the Minnesota Wild. One quick note on the Stadium Series this year: there is one more game. I mentioned there's 2 games in the Stadium Series for this season. The next and final game in the Stadium Series will feature the Colorado Avalanche versus the Detroit Red Wings at Coors Field on February 27th. So that would be coming up here in just a couple days, this weekend. But so the Wild were riding as high as can be, 4-0 to start the John Torchetti era, and then here the other night we go into XL Energy Center, where we have not won a home game this calendar year. The last home game we won in our home arena was December 28th, and we played the New York Islanders last night, and we lost 4-1. It wasn't like we were playing terrible or anything like that. It seemed like we were tired, for one thing. It also seemed, both physically and mentally, but we're also playing a good team, But for whatever reason, don't know why, we cannot win at the XL Energy Center. It might be a full 2 calendar months that we go without a single win in our home building. That is just something you can't happen if you even remotely think that you're a playoff team and are legitimately trying to gain a playoff berth. Now, we are not currently a playoff team. We're the playoffs to start today. However, we do have a couple games in hand on one of the teams we're chasing, primarily the Colorado Avalanche. So mathematically, as long as we keep playing good hockey, I'm not saying we got to win every game, but as long as we just keep playing good hockey, very, very possible and good chance that we will get one of those 2 final wild card spots, but that is about the best we could hope for. And then from there, I mean, anything can happen in the NHL playoffs, especially. Teams get hot at the right time, hot goalie, some hot power play, and boom, you're in the Stanley Cup Finals. That being said, my son so kindly pointed out the other night when we were watching the hockey game to me that the Wild have never won a championship, and they've never even been to the finals, and the state of Minnesota, even including the North Stars, have never won a championship. They've only been to 2 finals, and they've lost them both. I was just like, gee, thanks for all that information. I mean, that's actually great stats, thanks. But also, gee, thanks. Like, that's kind of a downer and rubbing it in my face. I was wanting to feel good about it, about the team for a little bit. But ultimately, it's hockey. It's a long season. You're not going to win every game, no matter how big of a run you get on. You are going to have to lose a game or 2 here at some point. And I think it's kind of nice to see how this team, under this new coaching regime, or at least the new interim coach, I should say, because he's not technically the head coach, how they're going to respond to a bump in the road. Everything had been really smooth sailing for the first 4 games, and you're going to get some obstacles at some point in time, so kind of nice, I think, that it popped up now when it did, to see how this team responds to it. The only thing I don't like about it is I would like that bump to occur on the road, because I feel that this whole inability to win on our home ice is just this ever-growing elephant in the room or monkey on our back, and we just need to, it just takes 1 game and it'll be gone. But until then, like I said, it gets bigger, it gets harder. That's what she said. And, it's just going to be more difficult until we finally nip it in the butt. So, I'd love to see us do that here someday soon. Some other wild notes. Eric Halla was the 2-star player of the week here, I want to say, a week ago. He's been playing great the last month. I mean, he's been playing really good since before Yo left, one of the few players who had been playing good this calendar year. So kudos to him. Another player stepping up who's young, getting some time due to injury, is Mike Riley. Not a ton of production from him, but nothing is standing out in his game that makes you feel like he's any sort of liability or gives you any worse of a chance or less of a chance to win when he's out there. So I like what I'm seeing from an early standpoint on in his career. I feel like he's got potential to be a productive player. I won't go further than that right now, but he's definitely, in my opinion, got potential to be a very nice, productive player in the National Hockey League. And then, before we're done talking hockey here, a few wild injury issues. We've still got Jonas Brodin out with a broken foot. He's been out since the beginning of February. He's missed 7 games total. Could really use him back, especially what he helps on defense. And then this one was pretty ugly the other night. I mean, it looked like he got knocked out twice. But Jason Zucker got one nasty concussion here a few nights ago. He has missed it would be 2 games ago. He's missed 1 game now. Hopefully he will be able to be back soon. Took a huge shot to the face/head. Basically was out on his feet falling to the ice. Then you saw the back of his head just bounce as hard and violently as possible off the back of the ice when he hit the ground. Like I said, it was not pretty, but hopefully it's nothing too serious and he's able to come back fairly soon. Again, though, the Brodin injury with the broken foot, that one, who knows? I have not heard a timetable yet for that return. On the plus side, Scandella had been out for a couple games with injury as well, and so had Spurgeon, but they're both back now, so nice to have them back in the lineup. closing Wild talk with their schedule, the Wild's next game is tomorrow night in Philadelphia versus the Flyers.